Hello everybody, it's Wyvern here with another bit of Total War Warhammer quick match gameplay. This time around I am playing as Clan Angrund against the Greenskins, led by the Garlic Boy, on the map Silver Spire. So the main advantage of playing Clan Angrund is that, of course, you get access to the Ghost Dwarf ancestors, which otherwise normal dwarves do not get access to. Though, of course, you lose access to most of the legendary dwarf lords, with the exception of Beliar Ironhammer. So for this build, knowing that I was going up against orcs who don't have the particularly best options for dealing with units with high physical resistance, as they don't have too much magic attacks or too many spells that can reliably do damage, I decided to make an attempt at it with running Angrund, and go very heavily into the Dwarf Ancestors. For my Lord, I'm running just a generic Dwarf Lord, though he is souped up very heavily with Potion of Toughness, Potion of Foolhardiness, the Fiery Ring, Foe Seeker, Furious Onslaught, and Stand Your Ground. Next, alongside him is Thorny Ironbrow, who is the Runesmith hero. He is coming in with all of his runes, as well as the rune that increases the melee attack from nearby units. Then two of the Thane heroes out on the flanks. Sorry about that, my mouse is being a little goofy. Are coming with Foe Seeker and Furious Onslaught to give out me some additional damage. Then for my front line, I have a mix of Longbeards and Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, simply to give me some armor-piercing punch as well as some staying power in the front line. And on the right flank, we do have the Warriors of Dragonfire Pass. Behind them are the Norgrimling's Ironbreakers, who are simply there to be capable of stiffening up the front line wherever that might be needed, and of course throwing their satchel charges in front to deal with enemy squishier units, which orcs can potentially bring, especially things such as nasty skulkers or various night goblin units. And then behind that we have 3 units of Rangers, 2 normal Rangers with great weapons, and of course the Ulthar's Raiders, here to debuff enemy lords and hopefully get some easy assassinations on them with the Mark of Ulthar. Now, we'll go to normal speed, as this is a fairly slow start. And as you can see, my opponent brought a somewhat interesting build. Knowing that I was bringing Angrund, and suspecting most likely that I was going to bring at least one Dwarf Ancestor, he did bring Azag the Slaughterer with Spirit Leech and Fate of Buna, both of which will be very powerful, as well as Wa and Stand Your Ground and Foe Seeker. As you can see, his artillery, which he brought 2 units of Rock Lobbers, is already opening fire on my dwarves and doing significant amounts of damage. For his front line, he brought several units of Orc Big Guns, which I think is a bit of an interesting choice, as they lack armor piercing, and then bonuses against large is practically worthless against dwarves. However, they are still a force to be reckoned with and can dish out immense amounts of hurt. On the flanks over here, he has more Orc Big Guns, and hidden in the trees, the Crimson Killers, who will definitely do decent against lower tier Dwarven Infantry, and 2 units of generic Black Orcs. Then, finally, out on the sides, he has the Rusty Arrows to debuff my infantry, which will greatly help his Orc Big Guns, who lack armor piercing, and then 1 unit of generic Night Goblin Archers, simply to debuff my units with poison. Now, as you can see, my Dwarf Warriors with great weapons are already taking quite a bit of a beating from the enemy artillery, and my Rangers are sort of threading their way through my army, trying to get to the front. And I'm trying to maintain some sort of cohesion in my force, though it is definitely being a bit of a struggle because of the way there are some choke points on this map. And I'm trying to retain a wide spacing so as not to be an easy target for my opponent's artillery. I am making an effort to keep my Ghost Ancestors towards the back so that they do not get targeted with a Spirit Leech, as their HP is very low, and being targeted by and they lack the classic Dwarven magic resistance, so they can be melted down very quickly. Now, I do hit Azag here with the Mark of Ulthar, but unfortunately the throwing axe is very slow projectile speed and fail to hit their target for most part. Furthermore, a strike from the Fate of Buna melts down my Dwarf Warriors with great weapons very significantly and will make them much less useful in the upcoming fight. Longbeards are taking some heavy artillery fire still as they close the distance, and my opponent is definitely doing a very good job of slowly whittling down, crippling my army before ever reaching range. And definitely a bit of a rare reversal of the usual Dwarf on Orc meta, where the Orcs usually are losing the ranged engagement. Now over here, I do try to pop a Fiery Ring, but it was a bit misplaced, and it sort of clips both units, but doesn't actually do good damage, particularly good damage to either. But of course, the fact that the Orc Big Guns have fairly high HP will also make them fairly tanky there. Now my Norgling's Ironbreakers do immediately begin to throw their satchel charges, which are doing very immense damage to the Orc Big Guns, and I'm trying to push my Rangers into the range of Azag to try to shoot him down. He does pop Stand Your Ground to reinforce his troops, and because my Lords were all tailing behind, they will be a little late to the party, and that is definitely going to hurt my units. As you can see, I'm already making a mistake here by having such a spread out engage. But fortunately, the fact that my opponent's front line is fairly dense will make it a bit hard for his Black Orcs to get into position, and he isn't really capable of flanking me. However, his artillery is wailing on me very heavily, and the fact that my Rangers are also so clumped up will make him a very juicy and very easy target for all these Goblin Rock Lobbers, and shortly I will begin taking very, very severe losses. At the same time, I'm not quite capable of dishing out the hurt I was hoping to get on Azak, as I no longer have access to the Mark of Ulthar, and already you can see I'm losing several units, probably about 24 Rangers already to that artillery fire. Now in the front line, my Dwarf Lord is popping. Dwarf Lord and the Runesmith are popping all of their buffs for the surrounding units, and they are slowly chewing through the Orc Big Guns and moving on to the Black Orcs behind them. Unfortunately, the Rusty Arrows are still firing, and the Catapults, of course, are still doing their work on the Ulthar's Raiders, melting them down. Norgling's Ironbreakers do countercharge these Orc Big Guns over here, hoping to tie them down before they do too much damage to Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, but they are taking quite a bit of a hurt there, and they will definitely be wavering and slowly falling apart there. Unfortunately, under sustained artillery fire, the Rangers, even though I attempted to space them out a little bit, are falling apart rather quickly, and this is definitely a major mistake I made with Micro. My Azag is attempting to focus Thorny Ironbrow, my Runesmith at the moment, which is fortunate for me, as Azag, despite having Spirit Leech, it does not actually have magic attacks, and his physical attacks will be greatly mitigated. In the meantime, I'm making sure to pop my Runes of Wrath and Ruin when available. This one being popped on the Black Orcs, and that will help melt them down very significantly. Spirit Leech does go off on Throny, and is of course doing immense damage to him, as his HP pool is fairly low, and he has no magic resistance. But I do try to recharge him into these Orc Big Guns simply to get cause the terror shock, as all the ghost dwarves do cause terror. Artillery, in the meantime, is definitely doing a major number on my Rangers, who are simply I'm not able to get value out of, and this fight over on the left flank has simply degenerated into a bit of a mosh pit. Our Goblin archer fire is still coming in, and the artillery at this point has extended most of their ammunition and has scored a very significant amount of kills, especially given their relatively low cost. Giving up on the idea of shutting down Azag, I begin using my Rangers to throw axes at the Black Orcs, which helps break this unit over here, and now my army is capable of swinging to the left. The fact that the Black Orcs have immunity to psychology does make the Ghost Dwarves a little bit less useful, but they can still definitely help terror out the Big Guns, who have no such immunity. The Crimson Killers are very strong against Dwarf low-end infantry, but unfortunately here they're getting somewhat mosh-pitted and stuck with Azag and the surrounding Orc Big Guns, and not really capable of being utilized to full. In the meantime, I do actually get a Rune of Negation off, despite the fact that my Runesmith is down to a measly 20 HP. He is still around and kicking. I do try to shoot at Azag the Slaughterer, trying to shoot at him with throwing axes, and unfortunately that exposes my flank to the archers, who are now wailing on my Rangers with great weapons. These Dwarf Warriors with the great weapons and the Longbeards will be pushed in to deal with Azag, but they are not really going to be able to shut him down, and he will, being a very large unit, he'll simply terror out these Rangers and then back away, as if with me being unable to do anything. The Longbeards, in the meantime, are getting bogged down fighting with Rusty Arrows and the Goblin Archers. Obviously this is a fight they will win in the long run, but it is definitely not entirely cost efficient, and the Longbeards do have a bit of an issue with dishing out damage. They simply don't do that much. They simply cannot do that much hurt. Azag does dive in, going for my heroes. Though at this point, my Runesmith, despite being near dead for a very long time now, has been popping several of his runes consistently and definitely helping buff my front line. But he does finally go down. I'm throwing my remaining throwing axes at Azag the Slaughterer, hoping to bring him down with the help of my Lord, the Thanes, the remaining Warriors of Dragonfire Pass, and whatever's left of the Norgling's Ironbreakers. And Azag is shortly brought down very quickly. The Wyvern doesn't have the greatest armor, and the Thanes and Lord have a very significant melee capability and are able to bring him down very low. And that leaves all these Orc Big Guns without leadership support, and the Crimson Killers as well as the Big Guns will shortly begin to waver and then rout. Fortunately, the Longbeards are struggling as the Rusty Arrows, and as they were beaten up before engaging. The Rusty Arrows are, of course, a veteran C9 unit, and so they are definitely holding their own against the Longbeards, whose offensive stats are somewhat lackluster. And so we can definitely see that they're not trading the greatest with these Rusty Arrows, which is a bit disappointing. I'd push my Rangers with my Ulthar's Raiders into the Night Goblin Archers, hoping to deal with them in close quarters, and back them up with more Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, simply hoping to overwhelm these guys and deal with them. The charge bonus does go through, so these guys' morale will boost, and then I drop a fire ring on the Night Goblin Archers, which absolutely breaks them. And the Drustiers are, of course, breaking to the Longbeards after a long and somewhat strenuous battle. Artillery is still pounding my infantry, and as you can see, it lands some pretty meaty hits here, which is dropping my units to very low critical levels. And at this point, I'm committing to attempting to shut down these fleeing Crimson Killers and the big guns who I simply cannot afford to allow to regroup. If I do, this game will definitely be lost for me, and I won't be able to recover. Fortunately, though, my opponent's army does begin to waver and shatter, and it ultimately shatters here right at the last moments as Azak just gets taken down by the mix of the remainder of the Ulthar's Raiders, the Longbeards, and the Warriors with great weapons. Now, this replay was... I wanted to showcase the Ghost Ancestors, and I think they definitely proved very useful in this replay. However, my play was anything but good, I think. I definitely didn't micromanage properly. I lost track of my range with great weapons. I think that had I run normal Thunderers instead of them, perhaps 3 units of Thunderers instead of Ulthar's Raiders and range with great weapons, I would have gotten much more use out of them, because their longer range would have allowed them to have a more safe spacing, and they wouldn't have been as likely to cluster up on each other when fighting at the choke point like that. Definitely, the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons got overwhelmed pretty badly, but the Longbeards held their ground, and as did Norgulum's Ironbreakers, helping stiffen things up and hold the line long after everyone else kind of broke and fled. The Orc Big Guns for my opponent didn't perform too well, as could be expected, I guess. All of them did decent amounts of damage. But as could be expected, they don't. Without the lack of armor piercing, they weren't going to do too well. The Black Orcs actually performed pretty well, of course, having armor piercing and being a dedicated anti-infantry unit. Though this one unit does seem to have struggled a bit, perhaps getting caught up against the hero. The Rustiers and the Rustiers actually ended up tying down one of my Longbeards in melee, which was a bit disappointing. And the Night Goblin Archers surprisingly dished out a bit of hurt, most likely crushing these Rangers as they were being harassed by Azak. Definitely the MVPs of this match for both from both teams, really. Would have been the Goblin Rock Clobbers, as they simply crushed my ranged contingent and definitely allowed my opponent to go into the fight with a significant advantage, both in ranged firepower as well as in the melee, because of how much damage they did, softening up my various units, especially the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons, who are my main source of close quarters damage output. So definitely well played to my opponent. As you can see, both units gained Chevron here. So definitely very well played. The Azak pick was very strong against Angrund, though I don't believe there were that many Spirit Legions dropped over the course of the game. Very close game. I had a lot of fun. I do hope you guys enjoyed this replay. If you did, be sure to leave a like or subscribe down below. If you have any comments, criticism, any suggestions for future builds or future things you'd like to see showcased, feel free to leave those down in the comments, and I'll be sure to read them and respond as soon as I can. I appreciate you all for watching, and bye for now.